Hello, First Baptist Church family. It's wonderful to be able to get up in front of you all again and present our quarterly business meeting. Obviously, this is another tough one. I don't get to see you guys. I miss seeing everyone in person. I know we all do. Please know that we're all praying and caring and loving for one another and hope that we can get back together as soon as possible as we continue to see increased vaccination numbers and the virus go down over the coming months. Today we're going to go briefly over what's going on in the church. Jim Scotty's going to share with us a little bit about buildings and grounds, how the Children's Center's doing, and what our progress is on that. And then, of course, we have David that's going to share with us a little bit about the financial health of the church, how we're doing, and what we need to be anticipating in the future. So guys, please know that everyone here loves you, cares for you, and we can't wait to see you back in the church as soon as possible.
I appreciate you all joining us today. What I want to say is just very brief. I want to talk basically about the complex. It continues to be maintained. There are some things that we've had fixed. There's been some gutters that have separated that we've fixed. There's been some door locks that have jammed or broken. We've taken care of that, and day-to-day items that just continue to be taken care of. As you will hear shortly, we have a budget surplus that was taken care of, and David will explain that. So with that surplus and where that money has been put, I hope to go to the Finance Committee sometime in the next month or so, try and begin to schedule some big projects that we've been putting off for a good long time because, quite frankly, we just didn't have the money. And hopefully we can get these things done with the generosity from last year. I want to talk briefly about the Children's Center. Our enrollment has been steady, but it can fluctuate at any time due to the virus. And so we continue to monitor that very closely. A few of our staff have had to quarantine due to contact tracing, and they've been out. And so if we have too many out, it's a possibility that the center would have to close for the prescribed 10 days or so. We have fortunately been able to escape COVID within the building with the exception of one positive downstairs. And due to that, we had one staff member that was deemed to be in close contact, and they had to quarantine for 14 days. The staff member has recovered and is back at work, and we're thankful for that. We're thankful for some people that we relied on to come in and help keep things running. And know that once we knew we had that positive contact, we were in contact with the health department, and we made sure that the place was disinfected and it was cleaned, and we will continue to do that anytime we feel that any place in the complex is threatened. So you can be assured that when we reopen, hopefully sometime this year, that you will feel safe in participating in worship service. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to David Honeycutt, who will bring us up to date on the year-end church budget and our endowment and other financial matters.
Thank you, Jim. As Josh and Jim alluded to, I'm just going to give you a quick financial update of where we stand at the end of the year. We've got our books closed out at this point since we are at the beginning of February, and I just wanted to give you a quick rundown and tell you how we did. As far as our assets, just our cash accounts in general, we have our checking account with BB&T and our money market accounts. Those totaled $415,042 at the end of the year. Of that, we have our temporarily restricted funds that we do use for certain designated purposes, and out of those funds, we had $338,946.83. So the remainder of $76,095 is our unrestricted net asset balance. Okay, so we'll move into our revenues and expenses for the year. Keep in mind, this is before we did our budget or true up to make our budget equal to an equal budget for our revenues and expenses to equal one another. Total for the year on our revenues were $651,208. In comparison to our budget was $699,873, so we did come in a little under budget. And also keep in mind, we were awarded a PPP loan/grant during the year, and the total of $158,200. This was split between the church and the children's center. If it were not for this, we would have definitely been in the red for the year, but we were fortunate to obtain that loan. We're still waiting loan forgiveness at this point. We did submit all the paperwork towards the end of December. As my understanding, the Small Business Association, Loan Association is still processing these applications, but most of them are on hold through March, so we'll see how that goes, but we are still awaiting our forgiveness. So moving on, as I said, our revenues totaled $651,208. As far as the expenses, I'm not going to go through all of the categories, but at the end of the year, our total expenses were $596,085.78. That left us with a surplus of $55,122.23. As I said, we would not have that if it had not been for our PPP loan. What we do at the end of the year, and I'm not going to get into all the accounting guts of this because I don't think we all want to go to accounting class today, but at the end of the year when we have a deficit or surplus, we have to go back and reallocate to bring it up so our revenues and expenses equal one another. So after our allocation, with that loss, let me find my paperwork here. Out of that 55,122.23, we take those amounts and we gross that up to our expenses for everything to zero out, and then we take those differences and allocate it to our some of our restricted accounts that I mentioned earlier. The majority of that difference went to building and grounds. As Jim mentioned, during the year, with us not being here and things, there's not been any projects that have taken place, and we were probably in desperate need of taking care of some of these at this point. But we did allocate $34,336.51 of that difference to the designated building and yard maintenance account, 8323. The rest of the accounts were fairly small. Around $5,000 went to the youth designated restricted account. Sunday school material and children's worship funds also received $1291 and $2943 respectively, and music memorials a little over $6,000. So that accounts, then we had a miscellaneous of around $4,700, but we go through this process, and as you go through the income expense account, all the ones that came in under budget, we tried to allocate as best as possible and move those funds to zero that out to the restricted accounts. If you do have any questions regarding how that's done or any questions about that process, just please sure and let us know. One other item to note, we did obtain, only in addition to the PPP loan, we also had a grant from Davidson County for PPE equipment, which would be sanitizers, cleaning solutions, gloves, masks, etc. We were able to obtain a small loan during the year for that as well, and that was around close to $2,500, and that was strictly a grant, so we did not have to pay that back. So we were fortunate in those regards. Also, we are in the process of, we've submitted our application for the second round of the PPP loan for this coming year. It would be the exact same amount that we got last year, so we basically used the same information, so that loan would be around the same amount of $158,400. So we're still in the process of waiting to hear. Our application is in process and being reviewed by the bank, so we will keep you posted on how that turns out. One other item to note was just how the status of the endowment was at the end of the year. As far as our year-to-date activity, we began the year at approximately $1,800,000. We did have small deposits of $33,275. We had income of around $60,000 for the year. Expenses were $12,755, and then our change in market value, just our unrealized gains and losses just over the passage of time, amounted to $58,080. So we did have a positive year. So our end of the year balance is $1,907,220.45. So our year-to-date return was around 6%, so that was pretty good. Just to mention, we'll see at some point in time during the year having a a meeting just to go over, it was brought up at our last meeting at some point, that go over the endowment and some of the funds that are allocated and how everything gets allocated in that whole process. Just also wanted to mention too, and since we did have a surplus for the year, we were not required or did not have to draw down our budgeted amount of $25,000 out of the endowment. So we were fortunate to keep that money as a whole in the endowment and let that continue to grow. So as I said, at this point, I just wanted to give you a brief rundown of how the year ended. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me or Jim here at the church, and we'll be glad to respond to any concerns that you may have. Thank you.
So today we want to close this meeting by first saying thank you to Jim and to David for all the hard work that they've put in. And in fact, I want to extend that thank you to the entire staff. They've done an incredible job throughout an unprecedented time that none of us saw coming, maintaining and even expanding what our church family is doing. So of course, our thanks goes out to all the staff. I also want to include the technical team on that. They've done an incredible job making sure that we can continue to worship, albeit in a very different way. So I know this year, this previous year, has been wonderful for some folks, and at the same time has been as bad or the worst year that a lot of people have ever experienced. And what I want you to remember going forward is that the church is open and here for you. So although we're not always physically present in the building, feel free to communicate with the church staff at your convenience. You can always call, you can always email, and someone will make sure that they're available to talk to you as we go forward. So I want everyone to continue to remember that God's in control and that God is great all the time. So we will continue to do and to keep the church as financially and spiritually strong as we can going forward. And like I said previously, I look very, very forward to the day where I can see everyone's faces back in the pews in front of me. So good luck and thank you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.